It's that time of the year. A new WWE game has just come out. 2K25 is here. And I've been playing this game an obscene amount ever since I got my hands on it. So, I think it's time for me to do a review on my thoughts on WWE 2K25. Let's do this! So getting into the match types, there are some updates across the board. We've got some new weapons that have been added, so hardcore matches or extreme rules matches actually have a few more toys to play with, such as a piece of a mannequin, for instance, or a traffic cone. The backstage brawl has been expanded, so there's now more options on top of the regular zone that you can now wrestle throughout the WWE archives, which is fun in of itself. There's stuff you can throw an opponent into which destroys on impact, lots of high surfaces that you can dive from. It's probably my new favourite place to do a backstage brawl in, but you can also brawl in the NXT parking lot, which is fun in its own right. It's the most wide open, expansive area, which does make it a little bit more sparse in all the different things you can do in it, but I think having that wide open environment is good, especially as now there are 8-person backstage brawls. You kind of sometimes need that space, realistically. Special guest referee matches now also can cover a much wider variety of matches. I'm glad to see them updating stuff like that. But there's also the inclusion of 2 new matches. The Underground match, where they remove the ropes and you can only win by submission or knockout, which may not be the greatest match of all time, but I do appreciate the changing gameplay. Having no ropes and having the win condition that it does changes things enough that this is actually quite a nice little distraction every so often. And then there's the Bloodline Rules match, which is absolutely ridiculously insane. If you pick the Bloodline Rules match, it's a one-on-one match, but one of your paybacks gets overwritten by a special payback where you can summon someone to come and help you. So if you're playing as, say, Roman Reigns, for instance, you could summon members of the Bloodline. But if your wrestler doesn't actually exist in a faction and typically wrestles on their own, you'll just get like a random wrestler coming down to help you. For instance, I had the Street Profits come and help me. Honestly, it's probably a little bit too crazy a match stipulation. I can't see myself using it all too often. At the same time though, I could see it being a fun thing to pull out on occasion with friends, so I don't dislike it either. They've also added intergender wrestling into the games, which again expands what you can do in WWE 2K25 by quite a substantial amount. People have been asking for this feature to return for years and have finally been allowed to do so. I'm pretty sure the women can even bleed now. They're no longer vampires, which is great. I feel like it's really been unfair that the women's wrestlers have been just exempt from certain parts of the WWE games just because of some weird, I guess, policy or something that would restrict them. Like, now that the women can get involved in all the stipulations that the men can, it makes the game so much better just from that alone. It's such a simple addition that adds so much. This year's showcase mode looks at the gigantic Anoa'i family, or the Bloodline in this case, and apart from one notable flaw, which I will be getting into, I actually really like this showcase mode. Not only was it great to wrestle as a huge variety of wrestlers, you got to wrestle as Solo Sikoa, Umaga, Yokozuna, the Head Shrinkers, High Chief Peter Maivia, and so much more. The matches were incredibly short. I remember in the 2K24 review, I mentioned that you really shouldn't do it in one sitting. And while I still wouldn't recommend doing this in one sitting, it's a lot easier to do so, because the matches are a lot quicker. You only have a few objectives to do this time around, and before the game, gets you on to the next match. And the fun thing about this is, in some of the matches, you're just copying history. Oh, this person won this match, you can, win it again. Or it could be changing history, like having Umaga maintain that undefeated streak against John Cena. And that just added more wrinkles that allow me to just absolutely adore this showcase mode. There's only, 2 problems with showcase mode. One problem that is persistent throughout are timed objectives. This is a new addition to 2K25, which drove me crazy. I just could not understand it. occasionally you'll get an objective that pops up that'll say you've got like 30 seconds or 45 seconds to hit a signature move. And while like say 8 times out of 10 I was able to do it with no problem, those times where I would be rushing to get the signature ready, go for the signature with like 10 seconds left to go, and then I get reversed, meaning I have to restart the match over, it was so infuriating. I genuinely don't like that addition to the game, and I'd rather they just axe time objectives in 2K26. The only other problem I had was this Money in the Bank match drove me insane, because I was trying desperately just to figure out how the new mechanics for Money in the Bank worked. They've changed it around. No longer is it the old school system where you had to do a bit of timing with the analog stick. Now it's a thing of like button pressing, now it's pressing the right buttons to get the briefcase off. But I couldn't get used to it for a while, because every time I would climb up, suddenly a wrestler would like come back to life, rush into the ring, and basically jump the ladder, and I was just getting so infuriated. But I don't want to but those are like 2 minor problems, because like I said, 8 times out of 10 I was fine with the time objectives. 17 matches. Hell, even the bonus match is better. I remember last year I was talking about the bonus match, don't bother with it, it's a Royal Rumble and the reward isn't even worth it. The bonus match this time around is actually better, and it's a fun gauntlet. Playing as I decided to play as High Chief Peter Maivia, and just watching as Peter Maivia was decimating all these different wrestlers. Umaga would come down and I would destroy them, and then The Rock came down and I was like, sorry grandson, boom! It was exhilarating. Genuinely an incredible choice of a bonus match in my opinion. So overall, the showcase mode was pretty excellent. I finally, as well, after several years, got back into My Rise. Now, I haven't played the My Rise mode in a long while, because before 2K20, I just found the mode too boring to finish. And then when 2K20s came around, I found it so insulting that I just gave up on the game mode for a while. It never had anything that made me need to play it, so I just didn't bother. But I finally went and gave it a proper go. And my goodness, it is so vastly improved, it's insane. In My Rise mode, you're a wrestler that's just been freshly signed to WWE. All the hype of you being the #1 draft pick quickly gets overshadowed by the invasion of a new group, Mutiny, full of NXT wrestlers who are sick and tired of some of the complaints that have been leveled at NXT for years now, of them being summoned to the main roster just to get overshadowed. And as you're trying desperately to fight off from NXT's takeover, I see what you did there, WWE, you're confiding in CM Punk, who's, who's trying to help you along. Or so you think. You end up summoning another wrestler that you create, and it looks like you've got a united front helping you to take on the opposition. Then it turns out CM Punk was a double agent, the real leader of NXT Mutiny. You start looking for help elsewhere. In my case, I got Drew McIntyre and Jade Cargill, who were absolutely a blast to play with, and and you fight in a bid to try and see who will get control of WWE. Will it be WWE maintaining control, or will NXT Mutiny take over? Just as you think you've done it, you're betrayed by the other wrestler you created. Honestly, I don't typically like when the wrestling games take away a win or loss from me. Usually I find it's ridiculous when I'm dominating a fight and then suddenly the game rips away control and is like, actually, you lose. But in this case, it works so well because it's how actual wrestling would work, where even if you're dominating, if someone betrays you and sticks the knife in your back, then yeah, that makes sense that you would lose then. And don't get me wrong, I was thinking, where can they possibly go from here? But then they give you another option. Who are you going to go to try and get WWE back? And let me tell you, the choice was obvious. And the cutscene where you and the WWE legends are taking back control of WWE is incredible. Seeing so many different faces, it felt like when I was watching the trailer for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate at the time. Because it was like, wait, there's DDP, there's Scott Steiner, Alundra Blaze, like Molly Holly. There were so many wrestlers, that appeared in that one cutscene. And then when you fought off CM Punk, and CM Punk runs into a car driving off, and you see Scott Steiner on the roof ripping off the Mutiny logo. It was beautiful. It's absolutely an incredible My Rise mode. It truly felt like the people who wrote My Rise mode were a lot more respectful of, the player's time, of what wrestling means. It's probably the closest that these WWE games have come to the classic wrestling storylines from, say, the SmackDown vs. Raw series, where things could go crazy as you try to rise to the top. Safe to say, I absolutely adore My Rise mode in WWE 2K25. Then there's The Island, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not as crazy about this one. The Island has got a fair bit of content to it. You can unlock like Nike gear and whatnot by playing this mode. There's a big open world, which, to be fair, has got a lot of detail going into it as you wander around. Like, there's a lot of little details about different wrestlers that you can pick out. There's special arenas that you can wrestle matches in. All of it is very impressive from that aspect, but the actual story aspect of it is something I'm just not interested in. I think I was turned off when I noticed that everything was in that visual novel style where, you just get a 2D portrait of a wrestler followed by like lines of dialogue just being like shown to you, and I just didn't find it all that engaging, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was awful or anything. I do want to stress that it may be a feature that I go back to every so often, but at the same time, it is just as likely that I'll just focus my time on the aspects that I find more interesting. Now, there's 3 features that I haven't touched yet. My GM and Universe, because I just haven't got around to them yet. But I don't think there's a whole lot that I would be able to say regarding those anyway. I'm sure there's been updates, don't get me wrong, but I don't think there's anything that's going to make me go, whoa, My GM mode, wow! And then there's My Faction mode, which I've sworn to myself I am not touching My Faction mode. It's stupid. It's such a greedy system. I don't like My Faction mode, and out of principle, I don't touch it. The create modes, as always, are absolutely stupendous. I'm going to show a few wrestlers that are made so far on the game, but I'm going to be using this a lot more, is all I can say. It's still very early days, but I am absolutely having a blast, creating wrestlers in this game. Plus, as always, there are some new additions. There's new body types to work with in the game, which allows me to have a greater variety of tools to work with when just trying to create a look for my wrestlers, which is always massively, massively appreciated. There's also a new fighting style, the giant fighting style, which is quite frankly overpowered, and I'm still trying to figure out how to utilize it with my own created wrestlers to create a sense of balance. Basically, what happens is, the moment the bell rings, a giant wrestler starts off with this health bar, and if you try to hit them with a combo, you can't finish the combo. There are moves you can't do on a giant wrestler until you dwindle that health bar, severely limiting your options. But once you've taken away that health bar, things go to normal and they become just a regular opponent. Which, even though it is OP for absolutely certain, I do think it's really cool. The first time I discovered it was when I was fighting 1990 Undertaker, and I thought, whoa, they've actually added in a mechanic that allows 1990 Undertaker to feel like that old school, doesn't sell a thing Undertaker. So, balancing aside, I love that addition. It really does add more complexity. Resiliency is a great overpowered mechanic for like later in a match, for someone to kick out when, it looked like all was over. And this looks like a great, currently overpowered mechanic for the beginning of a matchup. On top of that, there's 2 new paybacks that have been added. Paparazzi, which I haven't used yet myself, but seems to be basically the paparazzi method that was used back in the day when Yokozuna beat Hulk Hogan, where a cameraman comes up and basically just distracts your opponents. Maybe the camera explodes or something like that, I'm not sure. But that's that's a pretty cool mechanic, just to get someone to get a distraction in. And which would be excellent for cheating wrestlers to use. And then there's the adrenaline rush, which is basically similar to the giant payback thing, but is basically a great way to have like that kind of no-selling comeback. If you're trying to build up a wrestler that has like that kind of Sting mentality where they eventually start just no-selling and they're beating their chest going, come on, give me more. I think that's another awesome addition and makes so much sense to have in a wrestling game. And of course, with all the new moves that have been added, it's again just the creation suite is going to be the part I spend possibly hundreds of hours in, which seems to be the case every single year now. I just can't see myself putting this game down. It's crazy because I normally have a 2-year plan, which I referred to in my 2K24 review, which normally the plan would be play 2K24 for a bunch of time, maybe cover 2K25 for the DUOMINUS channel, then move on to 2K26 being the main game, because most of the features that'll be in 2K25 that work well will be carried over. So, there's usually benefits. And in fact, little life hack for those of you watching, if you bought 2K24, wait till 2K26 comes out, because here's a money-saving tip. Right now, they've been doing a thing for the past year or so, where when they release a new game, and you buy it on, say, console, you'll get you won't get just, say, 2K26 on Xbox Series and Xbox One, you'll also get 2K25 on Xbox Series and Xbox One, assuming they still do this next year. So if you want to, save some money and get more games for more bang for your buck, might be something to consider. I'm just saying. Now, speaking of the Xbox One version, I have heard that, unfortunately, the line has been drawn in the sand. Previous gen consoles cannot communicate with the modern gen ones. I haven't really looked too deeply into this claim, so maybe it's not true, but I'm not going to be surprised if it is the case. But I did wonder what differences the game had aside from that. So here's some footage I recorded of the Xbox One version, here's the Xbox Series version, just to give a comparison, really, of the two games running side by side. Honestly, my hope there is, while I do think it's sad that, the previous gen is getting left in the dust now, my hope is that this means that 2K, with 2K26 and onwards, will really get to take advantage of the advancements of current gen and future hardware by really getting to lean in. Maybe we'll get to see, finally, more than 8 wrestlers. Maybe we'll finally get to see more than 100 creator wrestlers. Who knows? Speaking of, there is a few changes as well that I do need to discuss. Menus have been tweaked about a bunch. If you go into exhibition mode to pick a match type, you'll notice that instead of listing them by how many wrestlers there are, it is now organized by match type, which does make more sense. Hairstyles and creator wrestler are now organized roughly by length or volume or something like that, which again makes sense. One change that I didn't like is that it used to be when you were picking to create a wrestler, you could actually see how many empty slots you had left. You can't do that anymore. Heaven knows why, but now you cannot see how many slots you've got left. That is very strange. But overall, with that all being said, would I recommend WWE 2K25? Honestly, I would 100% recommend it. This has been a blast of a game to play through. If you're a person who enjoys the main gameplay of the WWE games, and you've been enjoying the likes of 2K24, 2K23, any of the recent ones, this one's a blast. The updates, the new match types, that's great. If you wanted My Rise to be improved, I think it's been improved by leaps and bounds. Showcase mode feels a lot better in my opinion and less of a slog. The island, while not amazing, might be a great way for a lot of people who are looking to find more content to sink their time into. You've got My GM mode, Universe mode, Faction mode, I guess. And if you're someone like me who's insane about creating wrestlers, then that's still great. There's been little additions here and there that help to give me even more options to work with. So I'd say no matter how you're looking at it, unless you're looking for that No Mercy style experience, it's hard to be dissatisfied with this game. I have heard people say that they've ran into some bugs and glitches from their time playing WWE 2K25, but honestly, I've not had a single issue in my time playing it. Well, I had like one minor issue in my Rise where it hung on an entrance, the entrance wasn't actually happening, but I just pressed the button to skip the entrance. It really wasn't much of an issue. Like, the game has been running beautifully for me. I did just remember, actually, as I'm recording this, one caveat that I completely forgot to note. If you're looking to buy this game, maybe don't get the PC version. I've heard the PC version is the PS4, Xbox One version. It made me decide to go with the console version instead of buying the PC version, because I don't see the point in getting the PC version if it's going to be an apparently inferior version. So in the end, I got the Xbox version. Plus, I mean, like I said, you get more versions for your money, so why not? But despite all that, I still think it's a great experience. Highly, highly recommend you give it a go. And after you've played it, let me know what you think. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Let me know down in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed this review of WWE 2K25. Safe to say I'm enjoying it, and I'm probably going to jump right back into it in just a second. Please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time. I just played Squirrel Stapler, and I'm so shocked that a short 1 hour experience of a concept that's as absurd as it is genuinely did get me really anxious. Let's get into it. Now, in Squirrel Stapler, you're in this environment that looks like it came straight out of the Quake era of shooters. The story is that your beloved, who you've killed, is starting to not looking too good. So you go with the most rational option in order to deal with this. You kill a bunch of squirrels and then staple them on. You can see right away what I meant when I said that this is a very absurd premise. So you go through the forest and you hunt down squirrels. Each day you'll end up hunting down 5 squirrels, and by like the second day you're going to also be hunting down an extra large squirrel. You can carry up to 5 bullets on you at any one point, but you'll find extra bullets if you wander around in case you end up being really bad at the game. Now, the way that I went about this was I quickly found that trying to be sneaky was taking way too long and I was having a really tough time finding the squirrels, so I would just run across the field to get the squirrels to alert me to their presence by being startled, then I could turn around and chase them down. Now, it's clear that the developer wanted to try and negate this somewhat by adding squirrel bears into the later days, which are there to be alerted to when you're making noise and chase you down, and they're a lot faster than you. But if you know what the energy drinks are, which give you double speed, then it's not so much of a problem and you can just continue on with this stupid strategy. Now, throughout the game, there are little bits here and there that continuously increase my anxiety and put me on edge throughout the experience. There was this voice that whispered out to me while I was exploring. My beloved at one point appeared in the middle of the forest, which didn't help at all. And just little things like that, along with the threat of God coming at the end of the 5 days, made sure that I was always on edge. I was always waiting for something to happen. But the craziest bit was that the lack of anything crazy happening until the very end, no big jump scare or anything like that, made it all the more anxiety-inducing, because the game really knew how to keep me on edge, waiting for that big moment. But it doesn't play it until the very end. By the 5th day, you do your usual thing, and God is coming, and you get let known that by this distorted heavenly choir repeatedly chanting God is coming, getting louder and louder and louder. And I was thinking, okay, well, I got some bullets. I'm thinking like, either this is going to be inevitable or I'm going to shoot God and maybe get out of this. Because sometimes these games will give you like alternate endings where if you fight back, you might be able to get out of a situation. And I was frantically looking, trying to figure out where he was. And then it turned behind me and he was right in my face. Honestly, while I can't say that I screamed or anything like that, my heart was pounding and it was definitely something that made me jump. Like, I've complained before that in games like, say, Poppy Playtime, I can guarantee that the payoff is going to not be as good as it's going to be in my mind. this absolutely actually nails it. I don't think I could imagine something this horrifying. While the gameplay itself is rather simple, the actual, running around looking for the squirrels and whatnot, looking for the giant squirrel, finding a double squirrel, being attacked by ghost squirrels and having to run away from, having to run away from squirrel bears whilst having pickups and whatnot, actually does make for a pretty fun experience overall. And given that this game is less than an hour long, it's an easy recommendation for me. The horror side of it is very much anxiety-inducing. The gameplay is surprisingly fun. It's hard to really find much to complain about. Another aspect of why this game was so off-putting to me definitely has to do with the aesthetic. Having these stretched JPEGs gave just an off-putting experience, like I was playing something that really wasn't meant for me. There were trees that would grow and distort as you would approach them, making the environment feel all that much more alien and unwelcoming. And the low polygon aesthetic to the whole thing made sense immediately when I started the game, as I recognised a certain name in the corner, as this is the same person behind games like Dusk and Iron Lung. So it immediately made so much sense why the game is the way it is. Overall, I do have to give the game a hearty recommendation. The game is currently 35% off, so this is probably the best time to get a hold of it, and you can experience this unique horror experience for yourself. Wait, what's that I hear? I just played Emily is Away Less Than Free, I guess is the way to call it, the third game in the Emily is Away series, which I had completely forgotten there was more Emily is Away games. I didn't know about the second one, and I hadn't played the first one for a really long time, though after playing this, I'm gonna have to revisit it. The games all have a similar format as far as I'm aware, where you're messaging a series of different friends, trying to get the best ending possible depending on what scenario you're in. I got set up with a new profile on this Facebook clone with my friend Matt, who then had a quite bad breakup and ended up feeling down, and I ended up helping him create a new profile, which felt really natural. It was a perfect mirroring, really. He helped me get started with a profile, and now I was helping him. But then, as time went on, despite how healthy my relationship seemed with Emily, our relationship would go on to fizzle out in the end, and Matt would come in helping me, much like I had been when I was helping out with his new profile. Again, a perfect mirroring of what was going on, which made everything just feel so natural. You could tell me that was the only ending in the game, and I would completely believe you. It just feels like everything links together and wraps around on itself, because the relationship that my character had with Emily felt like it was so healthy, despite maybe some bumps in the road. But so did Matt's, and yet Matt's ended as well. I remember when I was trying to keep a brave face about the whole thing, trying to stay positive, I remember thinking to myself, I'm doing the exact same thing that Matt was doing with his relationship. I literally commented it in the beginning of the game that maybe they're hiding just how bad their relationship was getting. And it truly is incredible. And yet there are other endings you can get depending on what you do. Truthfully, it's left me a little bit unsure. Part of me really wants to replay the game because the writing is as stupendous as it is. I want to explore more wrinkles, find out how conversations go if I take a different route. But at the same time, this story felt so perfectly put together, I almost don't want to ruin it. Part of that is from the dialogue. It truly feels like I'm not talking to characters, but I'm talking to people. These people, everyone feels fully realized, three-dimensional. You run into several conundrums through the game that you realize are never quite as clear-cut as you might think. For instance, there's a bit early in the game when Matt was seen as maybe flirting with other girls and whatnot, and you wonder, was that the reason the relationship broke up? Does Matt have feelings for other girls? Does Matt have feelings for Emily? But no, it seems that she already was feeling like she was going to break up anyway, and Matt just doesn't seem to understand how he's coming across. At least that's what happened in my playthrough. Similar thing with Jeff. Matt's wondering, is Jeff hitting on Emily? Do they have feelings for each other? And based on what I had in my playthrough, while there may be something there, it also seemed more likely that Emily was trying to help Jeff. Saying that, Based on my ending, there is still a possibility that they may get together, but it was still left ambiguous, because after the breakup, Jeff's wondering what's going on with Emily. Maybe Emily really is just distraught by the relationship breaking up and isn't even thinking about getting together with Jeff. That's the thing. Because I have all these questions, it shows how well the game managed to really suck me into the world. I can't think of it just like, oh man, she's going to get right with Jeff, I can't believe it, I can't believe I was so nice to them. It genuinely leaves me guessing because the characters do feel three-dimensional. Maybe Jeff was trying to get close to Emily, or maybe Jeff really just needed a friend, like Emily said. That's great, I love that. The sadness of the ending as well, where Emily was coming to me way too late to tell me that something was wrong with the relationship, and really it felt like no matter what dialogue choices I picked, it really wasn't going to help. But it wasn't like some big blowout fight. It felt like how a lot of relationships end, how a lot of friendships end, where they kind of just fizzle out. That in itself has left me kind of feeling a little bit down, but I can only say in a good way, this is a very good, if slightly depressing experience. All the links to old YouTube videos, a link to like some Rain background player, it all made it just feel so much more real. That with the fully fleshed characters, I feel like this is probably one of the best written games that I've played either in a good long while or possibly period. Sure, there are stories with bigger twists and turns that I'll be talking about for the rest of my life, but if we're talking about from a character-to-character experience, I don't know if there's many experiences that can truly compare. Right now the game is part of the Steam Spring Sale, which means that it's 71p, or probably $1 in the US, as it's 90% off, and I honestly think when it's 90% off, you absolutely should run and jump for it. That is an amazing price to get this game at. I spent 3.5 hours playing it. I could spend a lot more if I go for the other endings. I just can't recommend it enough. If you're willing to overlook the fact that obviously it's not the most visually stimulating game of all time, and are willing to get sucked into the writing and characters, I think it's absolutely a must-play experience. And while I'm still torn on if I'll be playing the game again to try the other endings, I'm definitely going to be playing the second game and revisiting the first game before too long, so expect to see some reviews on the channel for them. And you can check those out by hitting that subscribe button. Please be sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and yeah, I'll see you all next time. I played Super Monkey Ball, and the only way I can describe it is like when you've got that favourite snack or that favourite meal from the shop, and then when you eat it, you realise that they've definitely changed out some of the ingredients for something cheaper. You may still like it, but it's definitely far less substantial, and in my case, far less enjoyable. Visually, for a 3DS game, the game absolutely still looks fine. There's nothing really wrong with the game graphically, for the most part. See, I actually have this game on real hardware, and one thing I will state is that the 3D effect actually gives me a headache. The constant shifting of the camera angles and I think the bright colours just proves to be too much for me, so I cannot have the 3D effect on when playing this game. It's just too much for me. But overall, it generally looks fine. Gameplay-wise, while I don't quite feel the physics are great, there's definitely some weirdness going on in my opinion, it generally controls pretty fine. The gameplay more falls apart when it comes to the level design. Now let me make it clear, I'm no expert Monkey Ball player or anything like that. Like, I love the Super Monkey Ball games, but I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'd probably call myself pretty terrible even. So when I say that this game is stupidly easy, that kind of should say something. There was maybe 1 or 2 levels in the entire game that I actually struggled with. Otherwise, it was pretty much a breeze, except for the parts where, because of the easiness, my brain would switch off and I'd just run headfirst into a bumper. The bumpers were the only real obstacle that I was worried about. The levels are wide enough that it's trivial to work around them, and with the guardrails littered throughout the levels, the chances of you falling out are so low. This might be good if this is like your very first Monkey Ball game, but even then, I feel like you'd get a better experience by just playing the regular games if you wanted to try them for the first time. Because this probably wouldn't even equip you for what would be to come in any of the other games. Because if I'm breezing through the final world, when normally I would flounder in any other Monkey Ball game, then something is seriously wrong with the level design. And the game overall takes maybe an hour to beat, if not less. It really is an absolute breeze to get through. Which on one hand, I get it. It's a 3DS game. It's not meant to be this... A lot of portable games don't try to be this uber long experience. But I would expect a little bit more from this game. Once you're done with that, unless you want to replay levels, the only other real thing to note are the party games, something that Super Monkey Ball usually does have some good history with. However, there's only 2 that I remember, that being Monkey Kart and Monkey Fight. The Monkey Fight is essentially a poor Smash clone. I wasn't terribly interested in it, it didn't feel that great to control. And then there's the Monkey Kart, which felt like it was a bit more complex. I was absolutely awful at it, but I could maybe see like a younger version of myself getting this game and maybe sinking enough hours into the Monkey Kart to where I'd actually get somewhat good at this. But the party games, much like the main game, is way too shallow. You know, I don't like giving negative reviews like this because I like seeing the bright side to a lot of games, but Super Monkey Ball 3D is such an inconsequential experience. Hell, there's not even a story. Whenever you pick a world, all that happens is a little pop-up book opens up, and you see your monkey notice a portal, and they fall in, and that's the story. And they do that with every single one. They just recycle the same animation, like 8 times? The music is okay, but it is largely unmemorable. There's only like 1 or maybe 2 tracks that I can remember. I think I can remember the one which was in the robot level because it had like, I think lyrics, or at least it was like sounds that sounded like someone was singing. But that's about it. It's totally serviceable, much like the gameplay, it's completely serviceable, but definitely not something I'm going to be remembering in about a week or 2. I wish I had more positive things to say. I want to stress that this isn't an awful game, it's just a 5 out of 10 maybe? Like, if you want to play a Monkey Ball game on the go, I mean, it's not terrible, you'll get through it just fine. There are worse portable Monkey Ball experiences. If you're looking for like a proper good Super Monkey Ball, this isn't the way to go in my opinion. So honestly, I cannot recommend you go out of your way to play it. There are just better experiences out there, especially now with the Nintendo Switch, where you can play 2 different Monkey Ball games that I'd argue are infinitely better than this. But hey, if you played the game, let me know what you think down in the comment section. I am always willing to hear differing opinions from myself. Maybe you really loved this game and think I'm being way too harsh on it. I'm totally open to hearing about that. And I'm looking forward to any discussion in the comment section. With that all being said, I'll see you all next time. You know, my friends invite me to play stuff with them all the time. You know, they say like, oh, you should play Fortnite, you should play this game, you should play that game. And usually, while I will sometimes buckle, I usually find that my enjoyment is purely because I'm playing with friends. You know, the gameplay itself may not be that interesting to me, but it's carried by the fact that I'm with my friends. So when I say that REPO manages to hit all the right spots, you know, not only am I having great fun with my friends, but I'm having great fun with the game at the same time, that alone should probably put across that I am absolutely about to give this game a glowing recommendation. So if you're unfamiliar with REPO, basically it's a game where you and a bunch of friends have to go around these different locations and collect valuable items. You put it in this cart, and basically you try and meet a quota. Kind of like games like, say, Lethal Company and whatnot, which I still have not yet played. Sometimes in levels there can be multiple quotas to fill. I've seen it go up as high as 4 quotas in a level. So you end up juggling, wanting to, you know, meet quota whilst also maybe trying to go over quota, because any excess money you tend to keep to spend on upgrades and other such stuff between levels. You know, you might want to get a strength upgrade in the next level, or a stamina upgrade so you can run for longer, or a double jump, or more health, or even a gun to deal with the enemies. As every time you enter a new level, you'll end up encountering a different enemy. It appears to be completely random which enemies you'll encounter each level, but each one poses its own risks. And I'm about to describe them whilst not remembering their names. There's the chef, which I only saw a few times, but I remember the disappointment I felt when I was running along with my friend's head. You know, basically if you die, you become like a head that you have to bring back to the cart, and once you meet quota, you can revive them. Another case of the balancing system of wanting to meet quota, you know, to revive your friends, but maybe just holding off a little bit longer for a bigger reward. And then the chef, like, hopped through the door, saw me, smiled, and tore me apart. I was so disappointed with that. There's the clown, which has never really been much of a threat to me, per se. I typically find I can hide from it pretty easily, but I saw my friends so many times get absolutely obliterated by the laser it lets out. There are the gnomes, which, I hate to say it, was such a difficult thing for me to deal with. Like, they weren't killing me, but like, it was so difficult for me to grab a hold of them and throw them away. I think because it's just I would panic, so I would have a hard time getting the cursor over them. There was also these like skull bomb looking ones, which were even worse. Like, even after I got the hang of the gnomes and would be able to handle them, the skull things were consistently a thing which I would have to just run away from. Then there was the Headman, which is one of the two enemies that I absolutely humiliated. The Headman is this giant disembodied head that'll chase you down. It tries to bite at you. And I remember one time I hid from it by hiding under the blackboard, which the blackboard is very thin. I don't know how I got away with that. And another time, I heard a friend saying, "Oh, you're dead," because the man had seen me under a table. But somehow, I was just far away enough that the Headman couldn't bite me. I don't know how. It was incredible though, and like the reactions we had afterwards when she was asked, when she was like, "How did you survive that? There is no way." Then there's that alien thing which hovers around and sucks you in, and oh my god, that was the worst one for me, because I remember the very first time I was playing Repo, I think my first death, I was surrounded by gnomes, I panicked, and then I got surrounded by 3 of the aliens. Oh my god, that was crazy. And I remember another time I died because the alien had spotted someone else, and I just barely got sucked into the into the psychic bubble that it created. There's the eye in the ceiling, which never really, I don't think it ever killed me, but so it just proved to be more of a nuisance than anything, because I would suddenly see my sight just gets, like, locked upwards, and then I'd have to wriggle around trying to figure out where the door was so I could just leave again. There was the knife lady who I think killed me a few times, but in fact I think one time I was hidden in like a closet, but because of its slashing attack it managed to still reach me anyway. There's the robe, which my one key memory of that thing was I was running back into the truck because we didn't know if we were all going to make it, so I think the idea was, now that they were getting ready to finish the 4th quota, I'd go back to the truck just in case I needed to hit the M button to leave. And the robe followed me in. I hid under the bench and watched as it eventually turned around and left. And I was thinking, oh my god. There's the tall baby, which is apparently called the Shadow Child, which I swear to God, you could be looking in the complete opposite direction, be in a different country, in a different time. You could be in the Stone Age, and some other Shadow Child be like, "I think you're looking at me." Then there was the Spewer, which I just kept calling the Sperm Cell, which, to be honest, never posed a problem for us. Like, it would latch on, but we all kind of was like, okay, well, that's a thing. So we just avoid the one that was talking in the really low voice until it was gone, and then we just continue. There was the Trudge, which is this slow-moving, really scary-looking, like, entity. And I remember one map, I swear we had 2 of them, which was wild. There was this thing called Animal, which I only saw once, and in it, it walked up to me, and then it walked away. And then finally, my favorite enemy, the Huntsman. And let me tell you, I made that enemy my bitch. The amount of time... So this enemy relies entirely on sound. You know, if you're walking around or running around, it will immediately lock onto you and shoot. If you even talk using the in-game voice chat, it will lock onto you and it will shoot. Apparently, it even uses the text-to-speech, but I'd never seen it until we were all collected together, and because one person's mic wasn't working, there was a lot of text-to-speech being used, and the huntsman was firing erratically, and I nearly got shot in the crossfire. But he can't see, so what I would commonly do, one thing I started doing was, at one level in particular, I was the huntsman's biggest op. Like, I was sneaking up to it, I would call it gay, dodge its shot, keep sneaking up to it, and I would keep doing that. Like, I would just keep calling it gay and dodging its shots. I went up to it with a grenade, and I blew it up. Like, I remember there was, like, some doubt that I'd actually be able to do it, because I'm not the best at this game, but I did. I blew it up. It was incredible. There was even twice in my gameplay session where I was running through a level, and then I'd find out that the huntsman was in the next room. I was practically kissing the huntsman on the lips, but right as he shot, I dived and managed to avoid its shot. It's so fun messing with the huntsman. The craziest bit about it really is that I'd gotten so used to how to avoid certain enemies like this that that some of my deaths wouldn't even be because of the monsters. It's because I would like fat finger the keyboard and end up just dying to the stupidest things. One time I was backing out and I fell into a pit. One time I wanted to sneak over to my friends to warn them of an enemy, but I accidentally hit the shift button and ran straight into the lava. Oh my god. There was one time I saw this pit, and my friends were like, "Don't jump in that." And I assumed that they were thinking from like a navigation perspective, like I jumped down and oh man, it's going to be a hell of a job getting you back out to the truck. No, it turns out that was just an instant death trap. And I could go on and on. This game is such a blast. And as for getting the items, well, it's quite simple really. You'll go through, you'll usually find small items that are worth a little bit of money, like an ocarina worth 500, but it's often the valuable items that can be a bit more of a hassle. For instance, you can find these diamonds which are like worth quite a lot of money, but they're extremely, ridiculously fragile. I believe the souls of the enemies that you kill are also worth a ton of money, but I never grabbed them because I didn't trust myself. And if it isn't, small and fragile, it's big and so overwhelmingly heavy that you need someone to, help to drag it back to the area to meet quota. There's also, other objects as well, like a haunted doll, which you have to use the scroll wheel to try and keep it away from you because it's trying to edge closer to attack. Or this music box, which starts you spinning all around, which I hated. I hated trying to navigate it. I would break it every time because I couldn't get through the doors. There's a frog, which if you drop it, it'll just destroy itself. Speaking of, one annoying thing is the monsters oftentimes will destroy your stuff if they walk into it. I remember one time we ended up losing because we straight up because I think the last person realized, oh, we don't have enough stuff to meet quota anymore, do we? I'm sure that there's probably something that makes it so if you look hard enough, an item will get pulled out of the game's backside to help you, but we realized, oh, we're truly screwed now. But that's kind of what makes it fun. The fact that you do have to play it carefully, work as a team, and try to adapt to the random assortment of enemies. You never know which map you're going to go into next. You never know which enemies you're going to have to deal with. And so you kind of have to plan on the fly, which I think personally makes it a preferable experience to, say, games like Among Us. In Among Us, you have to work against each other a lot of the time. Whereas I feel like a game like this, where you have to work together and rely on each other's strengths, I think that can be really cool. Suffice to say, REPO is a rare instance of a multiplayer game that I would probably be gladly playing with my friends for many times to come. With a colourful variety of enemies, some fun levels to traverse, with you never truly knowing what's going to be around the corner, I gotta say, I highly recommend checking out REPO for yourself. Big Rigs Over-the-Road Racing is infamously known to be one of the worst games of all time, something that has been mocked for years and years and years. So when I saw that it got an official Steam listing, to say that I was perplexed would be an understatement. This is a game which has gained a legacy for being considered the worst game of all time. Worse than Bubsy 3D, worse than Superman 64, worse than Sonic 06, worse than any of those games you can think of, because it was broken in so many ways. And, well, I couldn't really believe that the game had made it onto the Steam storefront. But I got it, and I think the ultimate question is this joke really worth spending money on when the internet's made a downloadable version of readily available for the past, decade or so? Well, let's get into it. Now, before I played Big Rigs Over the Road Racing, it turns out that there was a free DLC, which I downloaded at the same time, which only added layers to this. See, when you start the game, there's this program that looks like an installer wizard, but what that's doing is enabling achievements. It's really weird looking and honestly a little sketchy looking. There have been plenty of people that have speculated this as some sort of crypto miner or something. I don't think it is, and I will get into why I don't think it is in a moment. But I can totally see why people are really sketched out by it. It essentially pretends like it's installing, when in actuality, as people have pointed out, it's a loading bar, and every time it reaches the end, it just gives you another achievement. Now, some of them do make sense. There's ones like "You Are Winner" and "BMFR" or "Big Motherfucking Rigs," reference to the AVGN review from back in the day. I can't believe that review's 11 years old now. Jeez. But so many of the achievements are single characters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Why? Why is this a thing? I ended up getting all the achievements in my, hour of playtime. I'm pretty sure none of them are linked to anything you do in the games. I think they're all just given to you while you're playing. Now, onto the main game. The main game itself is Big Rigs. It's Big Rigs as you've known it for years. If you're not aware, Big Rigs was a racing game that got released back in the day that is infamous for how broken it is. There's no collision. The opponent's car, if it moves at all, will never finish a race because there is no condition coded into the game where you can lose. So even if it makes a full loop around, it will stop right at the finish line, waiting for you to finish. Every track only has one lap because I don't think they had the ability to code more than one lap in it. There's no collision. You'll go right through bridges, you'll go right through buildings, you'll go right through your opponents. There's an infinite speed acceleration to your reversal, meaning that you can go at obscene speeds. And there's one level in the game that straight up just does not exist. If it doesn't crash the game, it will load up another map that got patched in. This game is infamous for just how broken it is. And while it does have some amusement to it, I mean, it is fun to go absolutely ridiculous with the, reverse acceleration, and I'm sure, if it's your first time playing, there's going to be a lot of laughs. But that's not worth the money on its own. Even with the bewilderment I had with the achievements given by this extra bit, I still wouldn't call that enough. But then they give you the bonus content. In the Your Winner DLC, you get another version of Big Rigs, and as far as I'm aware, this is an all-new version, because as far as I know, there's the OG, there's the pre-release version that people found back in the day, which is somehow even more buggy, there is the OG patch, which allowed, did a few of the fixes that I think the version that we just talked about was the OG patched version, and then there's this brand new one. Now, in this brand new one, instead of your typical trucks, you now get to select from vehicles which I believe are from other games. In fact, I was told that this is actually built off of one of their other games, which is why Big Rigs now has collision. I know, that's crazy. We finally fixed Big Rigs, right? No, the collision is awful. The way it does collision is if you bump into something, you will immediately stop dead in your tracks. It's very easy to brake on its own. If you start rubbing up against one of the colliding surfaces, it'll start playing the crash sound at an insane degree, so it starts going when that happens, when a sound gets played far too quickly. There are some objects which have collision, but not at certain angles, so you can drive through certain objects. The opponent's car has collision, so that you can't just run right through them, but if they run into you, the game thinks that you ran into them, so you end up jumping behind them. which is really jarring. And overall, it's not that great. Another thing they tried to do was to have it so that you couldn't just drive right up slopes like you could in the old game, you know, trying to give it, I guess, some degree of, like, momentum, but it doesn't really work. It, again, is really jarring. You just stop dead in your tracks no matter how fast you're going. The only way to get around it is by using the reversal, which, by the way, they didn't fix that. Even on the collision, only one of the bridges works properly. The second one, you'll find yourself suddenly clipping through the bridge, and that's how I had to find out about the fact that the reverse acceleration wasn't fixed, because I had to use it to get out of the situation the game had put me in. Some of the levels will randomly crash. I had troubles with the last 2 levels a lot of the time crashing when I was trying to load them in. And it didn't seem to have, like, no real rhyme or reason. I would just try and load it and then the game would crash. They didn't fix any of the texture flickering that is available in the original game. It just seems like they added the collision, they added the slope stuff, and left it at that. It's honestly ridiculous. Overall, I find it such a strange release. Between the classic version of Big Rigs that we're all used to, this slightly updated version, which is still broken as all hell, the wizard thing that installs achievements, like, periodically. I don't understand this game. I don't understand why this game is on Steam. You can buy the soundtrack, by the way. Like, I don't know who was clamoring for the Big Rigs over-the-road racing soundtrack, but if you were, then hey, I got some good news for you. This is still, without a doubt, one of the worst games of all time. And now it's even more unforgivable because the game costs real money. It's not much money. You're going to be spending like $5 on it? But still, that is insane to me. Now, before I get into if you should buy it or not, we probably do need to tackle the crypto miner thing. See, because of how sketchy this game looks, how suddenly Big Rigs came out of nowhere, and there's this extra program now that looks really dodgy, people have suspected that it may be a crypto miner. One of the big things is that people have noted that when they launched the game, they've had a performance hiccup. They've noticed that their GPU is suddenly using a lot more resources. Now, I'm going to say what I looked at when I was using Task Manager. When I launched up this new wizard, which would be the most likely culprit for this, nothing happened. The performance stayed basically the same before I'd even launched it. When I launched up the OG Big Rigs, nothing happened. I only noticed a performance jump when I launched the updated version. Now, could they have put a crypto miner in that updated version? Possibly. My thought is that when they recompiled the game, they probably just botched it heavily to the point where it needs far more resources, even though it doesn't need them. Now, maybe I'm giving too much benefit of the doubt. Maybe it really is some nefarious thing, but I'm going by that old motto. Don't attribute to malice what could just be stupidity. And I think in this case, this is just a case where these developers did not know how to optimize this version of the game now that they had to recompile it. And that's why you may notice it taking up more of your GPU than the OG one. That's my speculation though, and I want to point out I'm not an expert, so if I put out this review and a week later people find a crypto miner, remember this is just speculation. Either way, no, I would highly recommend that you give this a miss. Just find a free download of the game online, because Big Rigs Over the Road Racing has been available online for such a long time now. I don't think it's worth spending the money for this unless you are someone who is really into getting terrible old video games. Like me. I have a copy of Bubsy 3D in my PS1 collection. But seriously, for 99% of you, the amusement factor is not going to make this worth your time. I'd highly recommend just getting a download of it online and spending the 5 to 10 minutes you'll have before you inevitably get bored with it. Now, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this Steam re-release of Big Rigs Over the Road Racing. Have you tried it out? What do you think? Is there any reason why you haven't played it yet if you haven't? Let me know down in the comment section, and please be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more.